Listen, and hold this as a single thread. The Stoic mind is an instrument of clarity, not a refuge from feeling. It hones judgment until perception and response are a single blade. When that blade is sharpened long enough, it opens not only a way through circumstance, but a way inward, toward a kind of deliberate emptiness. A void that is not nihilism, but the hospitable space where presence and freedom arise. This is not mysticism dressed in moralizing language. It is a careful description of how disciplined attention, practiced through specific intellectual and bodily disciplines, changes the architecture of perception, and thereby alters what you can do and who you can become. Stoicism begins with a taxonomy of control. Some things are within your power, your judgments, your choices, your effort, and some are not, other people's wills, the weather, the roll of fortune. That practical distinction trains the mind to stop manufacturing pointless grief and to invest energy where it will be effective. Marcus Aurelius learned this in the storms of empire. His meditations read like a military manual for the inner citadel. He writes to himself, in the terse logic of duty, accept what you cannot change, do what you must, and keep the city of your soul ordered. The discipline of repeating those reminders is a technology for attention. It reconditions the nervous system to attend to what is real, not to every phantom disturbance. The result is not emotional deadening, but an enlarged capacity to regard pain without being commandeered by it. Miyamoto Musashi arrives at the same endpoint from the blade and the dodo. In the Book of Five Rings, he teaches elimination of hesitation, of wasted motion, of conceptual clutter. His void is a chapter of paradox. To know the void is to see without the overlay of fantasy, to perceive the world absent the self's habitual distortions. Musashi's void is not emptiness as absence of meaning. It is emptiness as openness, the slack in which direct perception moves and pure action presents itself. For Musashi, mastery is the dissolution of the inner chatter that separates seeing from acting, where Marcus gives the civic formula for ruling oneself. Musashi gives the technical recipe for acting unconflicted under pressure. Together they form a single curriculum, order the mind, simplify action, and cultivate a space within that is free to respond with precision. The void in Musashi's teaching is technical and existential. He names the void as that which cannot be expressed because it is the place beyond contrivance, where pure skill meets situation and produces the correct response without deliberation. That is why he pairs elemental metaphors, earth, water, fire, wind, void, with a practice of relentless repetition and attentional refinement. The void is the capacity to hold your perception empty of preconceived narratives, so the situation itself can disclose its own demands. In modern terms, it is the trained attention that suspends automatic story-making and sees the affordances present, the opportunities for action. This suspension is an emptiness that is full of readiness, not of preformed reactions. Stoic practices cultivate a similar emptiness by carving out the space between perception and assent. The Stoic trains himself to notice an impulse, to interrogate the judgment that birthed it, and to refuse the immediate identification that would make the impulse master. That interval, brief and practiced, expands into room, the room where choice is possible. Over years, those micro-pauses accumulate into a sustained quality of inner stillness, not the stillness of avoidance, but the stillness of stewardship. Marcus repeatedly instructs himself to look at things as they are, to strip away the chatter of reputation and preference, and in that stripping he creates an inner void where true ends can be chosen. Now hold that void beside the classical Stoic logos, and you have the bridge to the divine. The Stoics spoke of an ordering reason in the world, a providential pattern that makes nature coherent. Marcus writes, as if there is an intelligible moral architecture, and as if attending rightly to it brings peace. For a Christian ear, that logos can be read as consonant with the word, the divine intelligence that sustains and orients creation. Musashi's void, then, is not a negation of the divine, but a clearing through which the divine ordering can be perceived and stewarded. Emptiness, in this reading, is the receptive posture of a soul prepared to see and obey the ordering that transcends mere impulse. Perception changes because the mind's filters change. When you habitually narrate every event through fear or vanity, the world coheres into threats or applause. When you cultivate emptiness, you weaken those filters. The same human event, a harsh word, a loss, a praise, ceases to generate the same cascade of reactive thoughts. The space you trained yields a different first move. That difference is not slight. In moment after moment, different first moves compound into different habits. Habits rearrange your environment. People respond to steadiness. Systems adapt to predictability. Opportunities favor those who act reliably rather than theatrically. This is the mechanics of how a Stoic void bends reality by altering the probability distributions in the social and personal ecologies around you. There is also a neuropsychological plausibility to this claim. Attention sculpts neural pathways. When you practice pausing, when you train the muscle of acceptance, you reroute habitual reactions. Musashi's repetition builds motor patterns. Marcus's daily rehearsals build cognitive patterns. Both produce a mind that is less noisy, more discriminating, capable of perceiving what truly matters. Emptiness is the thinning of extraneous signal. It is the clearing of the scanner so the relevant pattern appears. When your scanner is clean, you detect openings that others miss. You move when others hesitate, and you conserve energy where others scatter it. This practical change is also moral. Stoicism insists that virtue is the only true good. That insistence clarifies the aim of the void. It is not merely calm. It is the readiness to serve justice, to be patient, to act with integrity. Emptiness without moral orientation would be a dangerous blankness. Musashi's void presupposes discipline. Marcus's emptiness presupposes an ordered soul. The void is functional. It is the space in which right action can be chosen quickly and executed cleanly. When that space is regularly cultivated, a man becomes less available to the petty urgencies of ambition and more available to the tasks that sustain others. How does this connect to the divine more explicitly? Both Stoic providence and Christian sovereignty converge on the idea that the world is intelligible and morally ordered. The Stoic void is a posture of reception to that order. It is a cultivated availability to the shape of reality as it is. Christianity names the source of that ordering as a person, God, who invites human cooperation. The Stoic disciplines become, in Christian hands, disciplines of receptivity to grace. Premeditatio malorum becomes realistic stewardship. The pause between perception and assent becomes a space for prayer. The emptiness that allows clear action becomes a silence in which one can hear the voice that calls to love and justice. The void is then sanctified, not emptied out of meaning, but emptied of self-sovereignty, so the divine may inhabit and redirect. Majestic clarity is needed here. The void is not the absence of God. It is the vacuum into which God's ordering may be discerned. The metaphor of the vacuum is helpful, because a vacuum is not nothing, it is a readiness to receive. The spiritual danger is to confuse emptiness with nullity. The spiritual promise is to see emptiness as the necessary clearing for transcendence. Musashi's no conception is the raw technical capacity to act rightly. Marcus's accept what is the ethical capacity to prefer the good. Together they prepare a man to cooperate with whatever ordering is operative, whether he names it logos, providence, or the word. Practical steps that translate these ideas into habit are specific and austere. Begin with micro-practices of perceptual emptiness. Sit 5 minutes daily and watch breath and thought without commentary. Don't try to purge thoughts. Simply note them and return to the breath. This trains the interval between stimulus and assent. Add premeditatio malorum once a day. Briefly rehearse potential losses and inconveniences so their shock value is blunted and responses can be calibrated. Practice targeted exposure. Deliberately choose small discomforts, a cold shower, a fast, a refusal of petty comforts to retrain appetite. Each of these is a practical way to make the void less terrifying and more usable. Then practice action under emptiness. Place yourself in a low-stakes situation where you must choose quickly. A physical drill, a public speaking minute, a negotiation. Before acting, take a single breath and name one truth. What is my duty here? Then act without extra story. This trains the conjunctive muscle between clear perception and clean execution. Musashi trained the hand until the hand would do what the eye now saw. Marcus trained the mind until duty was the handmaiden of attention. Repeat these exercises until you experience the shrinking of the inner commentary. A thinning where the right move emerges almost spontaneously. There are ethical boundaries to hold. Emptiness must not be used to escape responsibility or to avoid emotional labor. The Stoic void does not mean you refuse grief. It means you grieve without being governed by shame or fury. It does not mean you detach from others. It means you refuse to make others mirrors for your vanity. When sorrow comes, enter it, name it, and let it teach. Let the void be a hospitable place for honest feeling, not a freezer for avoidance. Consider the social consequences. A man who practices this discipline will be, at first, perplexing. He will not swell with the highs of communal drama, nor will he sink into its lows. People may call him cold, but steadiness yields trust. Those who have lived long with unpredictable companions will value the one who remains steady. Trust is a capital that bends reality. It opens collaborations, admits counsel, and invites responsibility. The Stoic void, therefore, is an engine of relational leverage. It is not about withdrawing into solitude. It is about preparing oneself to serve more reliably. On the metaphysical side, the void trains perception to see patterns rather than panic. Where the untrained mind sees only accidents, the disciplined mind sees causality, motives, leverage points. That seeing allows better choices. Better choices over time carve institutions of trust, patterns of mutual aid, and corridors of influence. This is how inner emptiness propagates outward into civic goods. The chain runs. Attention allows choice. Choice creates habit. Habit builds character. Character attracts trust. Trust changes possibilities. There is no magic. There is compounding. Musashi's duels become mastery, not because of metaphysical favor, but because of accumulated readiness. Marcus's stability at the head of empire emerges from repeated internal commands to do his duty, regardless of the weather of fortune, to bring the divine fully into view. See how emptiness readies the receiving faculty. Prayer that is frantic fills the airwaves with noise. Prayer that is empty receives. The Christian tradition values silence as a vessel for God's speech. The Stoic also values silence as a tool for clear judgment. When the two meet, the result is a disciplined receptivity. The Christian who practices Stoic emptiness prays from a place of steadiness and listens with sharpened attention. The void becomes a chapel. The blade becomes an instrument of service, a final, precise warning. Do not mistake the technique for the telos. The void is a means, not an end. The aim remains virtue and the good. Musashi's practice of void leads to right action. Marcus's emptiness leads to duty fulfilled. The Christian adds charity and humility as ultimate aims. Without this telos, emptiness becomes hollow and technique becomes ego. Keep the aims clear. Let the void be the tool that makes love more possible, that makes justice more likely, that makes endurance human. You will test this claim. You will be betrayed. You will be praised. You will fail and be tempted to think the training was for nothing. The test is inevitable. Meet it with a simple liturgy. Name the fact. Name the duty. Take one small corrective step. Return to the practices. The void helps you return without collapse. That return is the crucible of transformation. If you practice this way, you will find that the world yields different openings. Not because the cosmos has been forced to reorder, but because you now operate from a center that is more exacting, more reliable, and more aligned with an intelligible pattern. You will begin to see what others cannot, to move when others freeze, to bear burdens that others would avoid. The void will not make you invincible. It will make you present. Presence is the quiet leverage that bends probabilities and cultivates meaning. In the end, the Stoic void is a discipline of absence that results in a fuller presence. Marcus and Musashi give us the methods. Early morning rehearsals, evening reckonings, repeated exposure to discomfort, the training of perception until ignorance does not command action. Christianity gives the telos, the presence of the divine, as the ultimate horizon for ordered living. When technique and telos meet, emptiness becomes a holy silence, in which right action finds its cue. That is the nature of the void, a cleared field in which the human will meets the ordering of the divine, and together they act.